There can be so much noise and so much tension that builds up over time, and the volume gets turned up, and that creates friction and conflict. So how do we resolve conflict in the workplace? Hey, it's Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose, and we're going to walk through 4 really helpful tools that I think will empower us and equip us to be able to walk through conflict in a very, very healthy way. And so we're going to walk through those. Hey, before I dive in, make sure you subscribe to the Business on Purpose YouTube channel and also our Business on Purpose podcast. Just go do a search of my Business on Purpose podcast. You'll see those things there. So let's dive into these 4 tools. You know, it was silly. I was thinking back to our children growing up, and I remember there were a couple of times where grown adults, and maybe sometimes it was me, screaming at an umpire for a bad call at a t-ball game. Why? Why do we lose our mind and create conflict? I looked up the word conflict. It literally means to strike together, to bring 2 things together. So I want you to think about metal grinding together, conflict, sparks, explosions. We're people with emotions. And we're people with opinions, and we're people with varying degrees of perspectives and worldviews and opinions and different thoughts. And so it's only logical that when you put 2 people together in an emotional situation where opinions can be expressed or biases can surface, explosion may not be that far behind. My first manager, Skip Clarkson at Pfizer, he used to tell all of us, speak to people the way they wish to be spoken to and not necessarily the way you wish to speak to them. And so that mindset is our foundational rally cry when discussing the importance and the power of the DISC profile. That's why we spend so much time on it. And understanding where a person is on that DISC graph gives you incredible empathy and intelligence when having the right conversation with the right people. See, it's not in our nature to think about another person when responding or reacting to a situation, because we're bent to be what I would classify as me-first thinkers and constantly asking, what's in it for me? What does it mean for me? It's not surprising that when 2 me-first people connect, an explosion might be imminent. You know, we say all the time, life and business necessarily intersect. You can have something happen at work and then successfully leave it at work in the same way, in the same home things follow you straight to work. So, buddy of mine, John Usry, who oversees business development at Shoreline Construction in South Carolina, said this recently in one of our coaching meetings. He said, you can't change someone's mind, but you can build rapport, offer empathy, and give them new information so they can change their own mind. I thought that was powerful. You can't change somebody's mind, but you can build rapport, offer empathy, and give them new information so that they can change their own mind. In other words, the goal is not to try harder, yell louder, talk faster, cry harder, withdraw sooner, or demand more for less. Instead, your goal is to be a stage builder. Now, stage builders, as the name implies, they set a stage. And that stage is a stage for which others have the opportunities to perform. Stage builders also get very specific instructions from the performers quietly and behind the scenes so that they can create the right atmosphere for the show so that the crowd can be wowed. That's what stage builders do. It's impossible for a stage builder to win if the performer does not win. But if the performer wins, the stage builder automatically wins every time. The goal of stage builder, again, as John Usry put it, is to de-escalate a combustible scenario. Isn't that a great statement? To de-escalate a combustible scenario. In other words, set the stage so the performer is in a position to wow the crowd. Then we all win. So in conflict resolution, being right is not necessarily a goal, as Chris Voss says. Instead, setting the right stage. That's the aim. That's what we're hunting for. So there are 4 tools that I want us to walk through that we can equip in our tool belt that will help stock our emotional and relational tool belt to allow us to minimize the pain and discomfort of conflict and instead build relationship and bring mutual joy and value. The first one of these is actually one of the hardest, and it's this idea of listening. Chris Voss, in his book, Never Split the Difference, he says it all starts with the universally acceptable premise that people want to be understood and accepted. Listening, he goes on to say, is the cheapest yet most effective concession we can make to get there. I thought that was good. Listening is discovering, finding new bits of insight, information, perspective. Listening is not thinking while the other person is talking or missing out on everything that they're saying or having your arms crossed and your eyes down like a little child. Listening is not showing apathy or having an attitude of, yeah, it's fine, or being selective in what you hear. Listening requires you to use your ears. So I've got a little acrostic here. The EARS. The E stands for eye contact and nonverbal responses. So having and maintaining good eye contact. The A stands for genuine questions. Asking genuine questions. So we've got eye contact. We're now asking genuine questions. Then what we want to do is repeat and drill down using a phrase like, hey, yeah, tell me more about that. Help me understand that a little bit more. Tell me more about that. Oh, that's interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. And then finally, we want to summarize with notes, actually writing things down. When we write things down, it's one of a core value of business on purpose is to write things down. One of the reasons it's a core value for us is when I see somebody writing something down when I'm talking or I'm writing something down while you're talking, it communicates to me that you're really engaged with what I'm saying. The second tool of resolving conflict is this tool of mirroring. And it's real simple. Mirroring, as Chris Voss said, is simply repeating the last 3 to 5 words of what the other person just said. For instance, if somebody says, hey, you really frustrated me when you cut me off in that meeting. Your response can be, oh man, I cut you off in the meeting? And they correct themselves and go, well, you didn't really cut me off, but I felt like my point wasn't being made yet before you started talking. And so what mirroring does is it forces more details. And those details are what allow us to be able to get common ground. The goal of mirroring is to allow the other person to keep talking and talking and talking. And many times they don't want to be right. They just want to be heard. They want to know that you're listening with your ears. Chris Voss quotes psychologist Richard Wiseman, who studied restaurants, and the average tip of a waiter increased by 70% using mirroring versus those servers who just use positive reinforcement. So when a server comes up and they mirror, hey, I'd like the chicken parmesan. Okay, you'd like the chicken parmesan? Yes, great. That gets them more of a tip than if you were to say, I'd like a chicken parmesan, and they go, awesome, that's amazing. Or even worse, they don't even write it down. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Third tool of conflict resolution is the tool of labeling, allowing you to verify the emotions of another person. Voss says, give someone's emotion a name. You show you identify with how that person feels. Give them a name, and you show how you identify with how they feel. Labeling connects you to a person much faster than traditional get-to-know-you methods. So Voss gives us 3 phrases that you can add to that tool in your tool belt. It seems like, it sounds like, it looks like, hey, it seems like you're frustrated. It sounds like you're upset. It looks like you're bothered. The final helpful tool to resolve conflict is simply your voice. Your voice can speed things up, get things going, rile people up, or your voice can slow things down. Remember again, rarely is a person defending the emotion they feel on the outside when conflict arises, but instead, we're trying to deal with the turmoil that's happening on the inside. There's something underneath. Your goal is to dig that up. We're not looking to put the smoke out. We're looking to blanket the fire. So when you're intentional about using those 4 tools, then you can reasonably hope for 2 outcomes. It's what my friend George Graves called empathy or rapport. Now, these are pretty common words, but the reality is empathy is the capability of sharing someone else's feelings. Rapport is this idea of a close, harmonious relationship. The word literally means to bring back. It's almost like rapport is you're buying back continuity. So in using these 4 tools to resolve conflict, our goal is not to be right, but our goal is to instead to speak to others they wish to be spoken to. Hey, as always, you can subscribe on our YouTube channel and also to the podcast, the My Business on Purpose podcast. Make sure to check us out there. And if you want more insight into what we do, go to mybusinessonpurpose.com, and we will see you on our next broadcast. Have a great week.